Hi folks, this is kind of a Star Wars appreciation video because I found something cool locally. It's kind of gotten around that ILM used model kits of cars and tanks and, you know, race cars and other things to decorate spaceships and sets and stuff to make them look real. It's called kit bashing. You take model kits, take out the trees, and stick those little parts all over the place. And if you do it on purpose and plan out where things are going to go and what connects to what, you can actually make very realistic looking stuff, obviously. And there's some famous shots of ILM where like the guys are kind of over something like the Millenium Falcon that's just bare painted acrylic. And they've got little model kit parts out. They've got their little tools and some like super glue was invented right around Empire, I think. So maybe not super glue, but maybe that like plastic solvent or epoxy, and they're putting these little parts all over the place. And behind them on the shelves, you can, not stacks of paper, but you can see model kit boxes just stacked, 3 of one, 4 of another, sources for these parts. I mean, some parts they made molds of, so they could have a bunch, but they were able to buy bulk model kits for these movies. So, I don't know if I have it here. I was out at some antique collectible place, and I saw model kits on the shelves, and usually they're nothing that I want, because the older ones are kind of rare and kind of hard to find nowadays, especially unbuilt. But I recognized the font. I was like, wait a minute, that's a thing. That's gotta be a thing. This is probably gonna be backwards for you because I'm using my front-facing camera. But I saw this old blue font and that symbol, and I was like, wait a minute, I know that, I've seen that. And sure enough, it's behind these guys building the Millenium Falcon. There were like 3 or 4 of these. So this engine model was used on the Millenium Falcon. So I got so excited, I was like, I'm taking that home. I know it's a Mazda rotary engine, a Wankel, 1/5 scale. I think the instruction booklet said 1975. But I was like, that's not even just like a later version of it. That's like literally the one from the 70s. And, you know, just like those model makers would have done, you get out the, what do they call them, parts trees? The plastic frames with all the parts on them. And like, for example, I pulled this out and I said, oh, I recognize this right here. I recognize that. That's a section of the Millenium Falcon. I'm like, oh. And the most famous part of this engine, they're clear, which is kind of, but when you paint it, it totally changes it. These, if you think about the Millenium Falcon, there's those 2 like prongs in the front of it. They have stuff all over the side of the spaceship. Like there's these plates, and then there's with stuff on the plates, and then there's stuff all the way around the edge. The 2 walls of the Millenium Falcon have these on them, all the way up to there, all these little parts. Obviously it's painted, so it looks like a more solid thing. But I think this is for the 5-foot model, or whatever the big model was, because these are rather large. And so if these are this big, oops, I fell over. If these are this big, then the, what do you call it? The big frame would have to be like this, I think, thick. So it would be one of the larger models. But look at that. And again, it's weird because I don't understand or know much about different engines or engineering history. I'm not going to build this engine. I mean, it even has, this was completely unbuilt. That's very lucky. It even has the little motor, the wires, to turn this into, oh, it even has the old contact cement. That's gross. But because this actually, these old engine kits did actually like work. That's so funny. Yeah, so here's the, from what I know, that would spin around kind of like those rulers, spiral graphs. You could like make like, that would spin around like that. I don't know where and when the red parts are used, if at all, I think. And there's so much more in Star Wars we don't know that many times we keep these, take out the parts we know so we can build something, or so we can share parts, or, you know, make molds of them for our kits so they're more solid. But we keep the rest because 9 times out of 10, the rest of it was used somewhere. It just hasn't been identified yet. I have a Ford Escort dashboard because the tachometer back was a very famous set piece in Empire Strikes Back, which I've molded, but that's kind of big. I have casts, but nobody seems to want them. They are kind of big, but they're these big things, and I kept the rest of the dashboard just, you know, for historical sake. Turns out the back plate of the odometer, I think the odometer, is on Rebel backpacks out in the snow on Hoth, like on the top left side or something. And we're like, oh, that's like, what's that? Oh, that came in the, oh, I have, you know, I have it. It's up there in storage or something. So this is always ongoing. And so the rest of this stuff, like, look at this panel. That's a cool panel. They probably use that on something. I don't know. Yeah, it's wild. Absolutely wild. So, these, yeah. And like these little things have like, because they're copies of the real parts, there's little fake screws on the corners. And so when you make a model with that, it looks like it's a plate that's been bolted on. And that is kind of the shtick in like the Star Wars alien universe. It's like, I think they called it like boilerplate look or technology, where like you'd have these like plates with rivets and stuff on the outside of a spaceship to make it look kind of industrial and kind of heavy duty and old school. These are huge. Look at, this is my head. Look at that. But yeah, these are the famous, like, complicated side plates on the Millenium Falcon. Tucked in there on the side in that groove around the Falcon. That's cool. That is very cool. So I couldn't pass this up. The Wankel engine. Wankel. You Wankel. This. I do kind of love the very, is this Helvetica? I don't know for sure, but it's like very basic lettering on like an off-white back. You know, it's nothing exciting. It's just, this is a rotary engine. Look, we typed it out for you. Yeah, the engine of the future. Yeah, it's wild. From Entex. And they had a bunch of these. Like, the nice thing about this bold font is that, like, in a blurry photograph, when you see these stacked up, you can kind of easily read them if you zoom in. That's really cool. I'm not a scale model builder. I've never built a spaceship before, but that might change. It might change, because this is pretty cool. I mean, there's people who have spent countless hours finding each little part of a Ferrari and a tank, all these little tiny bits all over the spaceships and color coding them, and it's already been done. So I'm standing on the shoulders of amazing prop replica people who are standing on the shoulders of amazing artists from ILM, like Joe Johnston and like John Dykstra and Lauren Peterson and the other people. I don't know everybody's name. There's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah, I'll never know how this works because I'm probably never going to do that, because it's kind of irreversible once you like plastic weld the parts together, and I don't want to do that. I might mold some of them so that if we do make models, they're going to be tough and you can handle them and drop them and it's okay. When you glue or screw things through an empty shell, it can crack it or warp it. So my resin casting skills are to the point where, like, it's the safer, reliable way of using a part. Interesting. Okay. Thank you for exploring the Wankel with me. Good night.